In this episode of News from Poland Business and Law, Jakub Baranowski, PhD, attorney at law, senior associate at Wardyński & Partners, will present the new Developers Act. After that, I will tell you how is Poland coping following Russia's suspension of gas supplies at the end of April 2022. Welcome to our program, which we address to foreigners acting as board members in Polish companies, foreign investors in Poland, and their foreign advisors.
Hi! One of the major changes to Polish real estate legislation in 2022 will be the entry into force of the so-called New Developers Act. It is a complex statute regulating the obligations, but also the rights of the real estate developers in relation to consumers buying residential properties. The New Developers Act is designed to provide consumers with greater security in the process of acquisition. Among other things, it significantly extends the applicability of the statute, adds new security instruments, and modifies the procedure for remedying defects. This means that it will put more burdens on developers planning the new real estate projects in Poland. Consequently, it may also impact the development of the private rented sector, currently one of the hottest topics on the Polish real estate market, especially for foreign investors. The New Developers Act, with some exceptions, will enter into force on July 1, 2022, but the statute provides for a 2-year grace period for ongoing projects if the developer has executed at least one development agreement before the entry into force of the new statute. The current statute applies only to so-called development agreements for residential units, namely, agreements under which the developer undertakes to erect the building and sell a residential unit to the buyer. In practice, consumers also conclude other types of agreements with the developer, such as reservation agreements or sale agreements, transferring not only residential units, but also parking spaces, garages, and storage rooms. The New Developers Act will fill this gap. From time it enters into force, the new statute will apply to all these agreements and in relation to all types of premises erected by the developer in the same construction process. Speaking of applicability, the current statute applies only to agreements concluded by developers with consumers. The New Developers Act will change this, as it will also apply to agreements concluded by consumers with other businesses, not just developers. In other words, if a developer transfers a unit to a group company, such as an SPV set up to carry out sales process, or sells a unit to another business, the sale agreement between the SPV or third party and the consumer will be still subject to the New Developers Act. The purpose of the new regulation is to make the New Developers Act a tight solution, embracing all agreements that are typically concluded with consumers seeking to acquire a unit with a garage or storage room. Speaking of agreements, the new statute introduces provisions regulating reservation agreements. A reservation agreement is typically executed between a developer and a potential buyer, and is usually backed by the payment of a reservation fee. Under the reservation agreement, the developer removes the unit from its offer for a specified period of time. During this time, the buyer may take a decision whether to actually buy the unit or may apply to a bank for a mortgage loan, if needed. The New Developers Act sets forth the main terms and conditions of a reservation agreement. In particular, it provides that the amount of the reservation fee cannot exceed 1% of the sale price. It also sets the conditions for a refund of the fee to the customer if a development agreement or sale agreement is not concluded. The New Developers Act introduces provisions governing a comprehensive procedure for remedying defects before the residential unit is handed over to the buyer. The statute provides statutory deadlines for remedying defects and gives the consumer a right to not accept the unit in the event of material defects. As these new rules differ from regulations already known under the Polish Civil Code, it is at present hard to predict how they will work in practice. The New Developers Act extends some of the obligations that are already known under the current statute. For instance, the obligation to provide a prospectus. Currently, a prospectus must be provided to a consumer only upon its request and before the conclusion of the development agreement. The New Developers Act will require the developer to provide the prospectus much earlier, at the stage of concluding reservation agreement. If the information in the prospectus changes after that, the client must be notified. Failure to include in the prospectus information required by law gives the client the right to withdraw from the development agreement and claim a refund of the price already paid. Considering the complexity of a prospectus, all of this means that the developer must commit resources to preparing a prospectus at the earliest stage of the project and remember to always update it when necessary. Last but not least, the new Developers Act introduces the Developers Guarantee Fund. This is a new security mechanism with the purpose of providing consumers with a greater chance of recovering payments made to the developer. For instance, in the event of the bankruptcy of the developer or the bank maintaining the escrow account, but also in the event of withdrawal from the agreement if the developer has failed to make a timely refund of payments. Every developer will have to transfer part of each installment of the price to the Developers Guarantee Fund. If the developer uses an open escrow account in the project, 1% of each installment will have to be transferred into the Developers Guarantee Fund. If a closed escrow account is used, only 1/10 of 1% of each installment will have to be transferred into the fund. These funds are not refundable and must be therefore considered as an additional project cost for the developer. Similar solutions can already be found in other industries, such as the Special Tourism Fund protecting tourists if their tour operator goes bankrupt. Those are just a few of the new regulations introduced by the forthcoming new Developers Act, which will undoubtedly have to be taken into consideration by every investor planning to invest in residential real estate in Poland, especially from the perspective of the time and resources required to bring the project to completion. Thank you for your attention. I hope this has been helpful.
On 27 April 2022, Russia stopped supplying gas to Poland because Poland refused to pay for the gas in rubles. It refused because, firstly, it would have contravened the gas supply contract, which require payments in dollars. Secondly, because it would have violated the sanctions that the European Union has placed on Russia for its attack on Ukraine. By demanding to be paid in rubles, Russia is attempting to shore up its currency. But how will the demand for gas from Polish businesses and citizens be met? Firstly, it will be imported via gas pipelines from Germany, the Czech Republic, Lithuania and Slovakia over special connections to those European states' networks. One cannot rule out that this may be Russian gas reaching Poland by a roundabout route. Secondly, thanks to a liquefied natural gas marine terminal built on the Baltic coast just by the border with Germany, Poland imports LNG by sea from Qatar, the United States, Norway, Trinidad and Tobago and Nigeria. Thirdly, starting from 1st October 2022, Poland will be importing gas from Norway along the Baltic Pipe gas pipeline, whose construction, which started in 2015, is nearing completion. Fourthly, Poland's own domestic gas extraction already meets around 20% of domestic demand. Fifthly, gas may be drawn from underground storage facilities that have been set up in depleted former natural gas reservoirs around the country. These are currently 76% full and are in the process of being replenished. To conclude, due to investments which were prudently launched many years ago, Poland will manage without Russian gas. Nevertheless, gas prices on the Polish market will be higher than they have been in the past. Thank you for watching this episode. See you soon.